As with each of CrossGen's 4 launch titles, CrossGen Chronicles starts in the depths of space. Energies flare from nothing. One, a coruscating, twisting corona of red. The second is a sharp, jagged halo of yellow. In time, they gather in intensity and burst, revealing figures. And these are some figures, let me tell you. To put it simply, they're practically godlike. The three on the left remain wrapped in red energy. There is an older-looking man, bald up top, with gray hair reaching away from his temples like a crown. He wears mostly red cloth and silver armor, but he doesn't look like a warrior. He isn't named in this particular issue, but all this information is available with a quick Google search and some research, so I'll just let y'all know their names here anyways. This guy in particular's name is Orium. The next is a man wrapped completely in a thick, twisting red cloak. We can barely see his face, it is so covered, but a single glowing red eye peeks out. Later on in the issue, we will see that a thin scar crosses that eye. This is Ganesh. The final figure is a woman. And what a woman! She is tall and fit, with high cheekbones and extremely long white hair. Were she standing on the ground, her hair would touch it with hair to spare, but here in space it maintains a nicely controlled float. She is dressed in a very complicated outfit that I am not going to try to explain. Most of it looks like it is painted on more than worn, which shows off her body. This is Ingra. Visible on 2 of the 3 people is a symbol, which sure looks like the red half of the CrossGen sigil. Ain't that interesting? Standing opposite them are another 3 figures, wearing yellow energy. One of them is a tank of a man, with broad shoulders, thick neck muscles, and a wide torso. This man is a warrior, a hunter, actually. He, too, is bald, save for the hair around his temples, but his is still brown, as is his beard and mustache. This is Trenin. There is a woman here on this side as well, similarly fit and muscular with some bohan donkeroos, but wearing armor and a cape. A massive blast of yellow hair billows from her head like a cloud and floats in the void. Her name is Yala. And standing at their front, staring down Ingra, is an incredibly fit man. He has the build of Superman, all hard muscles, but in slightly more proportion. He wears clothes that fit him and show off his trim body. He doesn't particularly look like a fighter, but he does look like he can handle himself, if he is pushed to it. He too wears a cape and has blonde hair. This is Pyrem. These 3 also wear a symbol, like that of the yellow portion of the CrossGen sigil. Pyrem speaks first. "You're aware of what happened?" Ingra replies, "Difficult not to be, don't you think? Our very foundations were shaken. Believe me, I don't enjoy your company enough to keep it were the situation not serious." "I assume you're going to say that you had nothing to do with it," she asks, her eyes cold. Trenin moves forward slightly. "Keep a civil tongue, witch." But Yala holds him back. "Be nice," she warns. Pyrem says that it was obviously not their doing. Not that you meant to suggest it was so. No, of course not," Ingra says, disbelieving. "Then who did it? Who is responsible?" Pyrem watches her. "We have no idea who they are, much less where they came from. Although one of your number might provide a window, yes?" Annoyed, she says yes, if the old fool has his wits about him. Ingra calls for the bald man on her side, and it takes a few tries to get his attention. Once she does, Orium's eyes glow and energy gathers in his hands. It forms what should be a familiar symbol by this point. "They simply appeared, you know, these new players, each on a different world. There seems to be little in common, save for this." He creates an image of the sigil. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown episode 32.2 of Meridian, The Chronicles of Meridian. Ben, what the heck is this crap? You might be asking me right now. This isn't Meridian, the CrossGen book that you got me all hyped up and excited for. Who the floop are these people? Where's Sephie? Where's Alon? What is going on, man? Take it easy. CrossGen Chronicles is the first entry into the CrossGen universe that they published. It was originally released in June of 2000, a full month before the launch of their initial 4 titles. The credits say that it was written by Ron Marz with Barbara Kesel, penciled by Claudio Castellini, inked by Cesar Rodriquez and Andrew Crossley, with colors by Michael Atiyeh. Chronicles was a big part of CrossGen's initial launch into the comic book market. It was 1/4 of the needed issues to qualify for the money-back guarantee. It also acts as an introduction to not just the 4 launch titles, but to CrossGen's 5th title as well, which we haven't even spoken about. More on that in a minute. Chronicles would go on to live up to its name, with each issue focusing on a story from the past of one of CrossGen's comics. Issue 2, for example, tells the story of how the war between the Heron and Raven dynasties came to an end over in Scion. And Issue 3 will detail how Sephie's mother and father met, as well as give us some more backstory on Elon's treacherous motivations. Issue 4 will go on to focus on Sigil, Issue 5 is on Mystic, so on and so forth, with clear moments in the story to indicate where in continuity of each comic Chronicles takes place. Despite it being a quarterly book, CrossGen was working very hard to make sure that Chronicles was both a necessary title to read in order to learn more about each title and the overall universe, right? And yet also be a totally ignorable book. If you read the first 6 issues of Scion, or Meridian, or Sigil, or Mystic, and you never read Chronicles at all, you'd be fine, to be quite honest. The story still makes perfect sense, the characters work. Yes, you are missing a bit of the broader context of the CrossGen universe, maybe a little bit of emotional weight, but as a reader, you could get along quite fine without Chronicles. As previously stated, CrossGen was trying to appeal to readers both new and old, short-term buyers and long-term lifers. Chronicles is a carefully structured balancing act, trying to do it all and do it beautifully. Authors Ron Marz and Barbara Kesel are, basically at this point, the 2 main story architects of CrossGen at the time, save for Mark Alessi's basic concepts. Marz writes 2 of the launch titles, Kesel writes 2 of the launch titles, and so it makes a lot of sense to just have them team up here. The group of characters that we have just seen are collectively called the First, and if you've been paying attention, that name should stand out to you. In the first issue of Meridian, in the first issue of all of the comics, but in this case Meridian, when the creator is chatting with the mentor, they mention that the energies of the universe are dying out, and yet the First do nothing to prevent it. The mentor then suggests the sigil-bearers as a way of stirring the universal pot. It's putting some dirt in the First's eye, so to speak, because maybe that would motivate them to get off their shapely behinds and do something, guys. And hey, look at that. They're doing something. The First would go on to star in their own ongoing series in November of 2000, which was written by Barbara Kesel after she leaves Sigil in the very capable hands of author Mark Waid. Given that this issue specifically credits Marz first and gives Kesel a slightly lesser credit, I get the impression that Ron Marz wrote the majority of this issue, and Kesel may have been brought in to help smooth over dialogue, or characters' voices, or to line things up with her individual titles to make sure that it flows well, right? I would assume, however, that Kesel was the one who wrote the First in their framing scenes, given that she is the one who goes on to write their ongoing series, but like I said, Marz is given the main issue credit. So who wrote what in this issue is a little bit up in the air, save for the upcoming individual scenes that focus on each of the 4 individual comics. That said, what we've been presented with is certainly mysterious. The first appear to be divided into two different groups, two different cultures, two types of superpowers, maybe, given that Orium is the only one who can provide a window into the worlds. Ingra's group, characterized by their red energy, red eyes, and red clothing, seem pretty cold and hostile. Ganesh says absolutely nothing up to this point. Orium appears kind of detached, and even Ingra makes a point of saying that he may not have his wits about him. Whether he's detached from this particular moment or from all of reality, it's hard to say. And Ingra comes off as an absolute ice queen. She stabs these quiet accusations at the other side, implying that they are the one behind the creation of the sigil-bearers, without actually saying it, because that's not how politics work. There is clearly some tension between these two sides, although we don't know why that is the situation as of yet. And that's okay. Again, I'm fine with there being a mystery. I just want to know that that mystery is going to get addressed moving forward. And having read all of these comics, boy does it. We do know that all of these 6, at the very least, are superpowered. They teleport into open space, they can converse in a vacuum, their eyes glow, they're all coated in energy, and as stated, Orium can clearly create like illusions or scrying surfaces or something along those lines. Solicitations of CrossGen Chronicles describe the first as the gods of the CrossGen universe. But if these folks are gods, if they created the CrossGen universe, what does that make the character that we call the creator and the mentor? Are they beings that are above the first in like a cosmic hierarchy? Or are they contemporaries upset that the first aren't pulling their weight anymore while they sit over in their corner of the cosmos? And if the first are gods, then why do the sigil-bearers bother them so much? Clearly, there's the mystery of who or what created them going on here, and why the sigil-bearer's mark matches the symbol on the first's 2 opposing sides. That is what brought these 6 characters together. They see a sigil-bearer, they know that they didn't have a hand in its creation. They're empowering, whatever you want to call it. But they also see the other side's mark as well. It is natural to assume that whatever this is, it must be their fault because I didn't do it. And so they need to figure it out. If they can ever stop sniping at each other for 5 seconds. Penciler Claudio Castellini is an artist that I had never seen before the first time I read Chronicles, but it makes a lot of sense to me because he had largely drawn titles that were just outside of my interest as a kid. Born in Rome, Castellini started out in the European comic scene. His first published work in the States was a Silver Surfer graphic novel written by Ron Marz, who had a long history on the Silver Surfer in the mid-90s. I would guess that the two of them got along well, as they paired again on the Marvel vs. DC miniseries in 1996, which led to the Amalgam line of titles, and now they pair together again on Chronicles. Castellini has a very interesting style in that I really want to call it realistic, save for the fact that really it isn't. Everything that he draws regarding these characters is enhanced. If a man is handsome, then he isn't just handsome, he is ripped, with chiseled features and pouty lips and 6-pack abs that you could grate cheese on. It's ridiculous. The women aren't just beautiful, they are curvy to the point of impossibility, with sharp, pointed breasts and, depending on the scene of the comic, well-defined nipples, which gets really kind of ridiculous. It was definitely not something that 15-year-old Ben had seen in his comics yet. Think of, like, Michelangelo's sculpture David, if you're trying to picture Castellini's style on the podcast version. Yes, it does start in realism, but then you take that realism and you kick it up a notch. You push it to perfection, into, quite frankly, the realm of absurdity. Trenin isn't just muscular and bulky, he is literally shaped like a V, with these huge, wide shoulders that are thick with muscle, and a waist about as big around as his wrist. This Greco-Roman style is perfect for the first. After all, they are meant to be gods. They are also dressed incredibly different. Like, these costumes look like such a mishmash, where they've got cloth and armor and leather and the spandex parts that look like it's just painted on their skin. They look like they could be sci-fi characters or fantasy characters, or maybe, at a long stretch, superheroes. All of those things at once, and yet not comfortable in any of those categories. The first are something else, and they really do feel like it from their appearance and their manner. But they also feel particularly human in the way that they're sniping and bickering at each other, which is really impressive. I particularly like the different energy fields that Castellini has around each group, demonstrating that even the way their powers appear visually is unique to each side. That is such a small detail, but it helps show that there is this real divide in power and style here, even if we don't know why that is the case yet. So these 6 representatives of the first have gathered together to see who created the sigil-bearers, and maybe what they are, who they are, what are they doing, are they a threat? That's the important thing. Are they a threat? Orium creates a looking sphere, and our first stop is the planet Ceres, where the comic book Mystic is set, which I will not be covering here. Don't worry, dear listener, I do plan to cover Mystic someday, and this omission is not going to impact your understanding of Meridian at all. Because this is a 48-page comic with a lot of things to explain and describe, and we don't have time to cover all 3 other books that CrossGen was setting up here. We are here for Meridian, folks. Let's all agree on that. Right now, we're here for Meridian, so we're going to focus on that. I will point out that every one of these little sneak peeks is set at the same time in the release order of CrossGen's comics, meaning between issues 1 and 2 of each individual book. Hence why I have decided to cover Chronicles here between the episode on Meridian issue 1 and Meridian issue 2. There's a plan at work here, folks. After we peep on Mystic, Orium does point out that the woman, meaning Giselle, the lead character of Mystic, now wields a great deal of magical power. I do want to take the time to mention this because it establishes an important precedent in the CrossGen universe, and that is that there is magic in the universe. And the first aren't amazed by it. Despite that statement, Yala isn't quite convinced that even with all the power that this woman now has, that she is a threat to the likes of them. But Trenin folds his arms. They wouldn't have gathered if they weren't a threat, and she's just the first one that they've looked at. Others bear the mark. The group then looks in on Samandal Ray, the lead character of Sigil, the line's sci-fi war comic. But unlike with Mystic, they don't choose to stop watching Sam. Instead, their feed, their internet connection, so to speak, is abruptly cut off. This causes Orium to cry out as his sphere of water explodes. Ingra howls at him. "What did you do? What happened?" But Orium doesn't know. He didn't do anything. It's as if the sigil-bearer was simply gone, as if he was somehow hidden from them. Trenin takes that personally. Nothing is hidden from them. This one bears a closer investigation. Yala nods. Hunt him, Trenin. Trenin is actually the only one of the first named in this issue, by the way. And in a nice bit of prescient fieldwork here, Trenin actually goes to show up in Sigil in a month's time when this comic is released. So you can literally follow Trenin from this comic to that comic. This is the kind of background stuff that CrossGen did all the time that I really like. Pyrem looks at Orium calmly. Are they all lost to us? I don't believe so, the sphere says, conjuring a new window. Just that one specifically. I can show you others. Now we move to Avalon, where Prince Ethan has just wounded Prince Braun, setting into motion the war that would occupy most of the comic's Scion story. Ingra smiles as an enraged Braun grabs at Ethan's throat. Well, it looks like this one won't be living long enough to become a problem. Pyrem doesn't think that they'll be so easy to kill, although that is just an educated guess. Maybe your talkative friend has something to say on the matter. The cloaked figure, Ganesh, just floats there, and he says nothing in response. But Yala turns her attention to Pyrem, perhaps surprised that he would ask Ganish's opinion. Maybe she's concerned that he would ask his opinion. She doesn't say anything when she does, she just looks, but that look speaks volumes, even if we don't understand what they are. No? Pyrem asks when Ganish doesn't reply. How unusual. Ingra brushes this off. You waste your time attempting to bait him. Who is the next one? The seer generates a new window, and he says no, not one, two. And now, dear listener, we move to Demetria. This is what we're here for. We visit Elan's personal island, moored just off the side of Catador that night, shortly after Sephie's secret arrival. We get a full-page shot of the island, with intricate ore pods held in place by massive, ornate, golden metal structures. It is a shot very similar to the one that we saw during the creator's chat with Mentor, showing us how physically similar the two islands are. Remember, we haven't been to Catador yet in Meridian, so this is a little bit of a sneak peek into Issue 2's new locale. And visually, it is worlds apart from Meridian. Gone is the green landscape and soft brown earth, the white homes and businesses with their tile roofs. Elan's place of residence is a massive estate, all Gothic architecture, tall spires and domed roofs. The interiors are all lit up by candles and lamps, making the darkened city seem like it's watching us. Where Meridian looked calm and beautiful, Elan's island is spooky, and it feels haunted. I kind of love it. On the paved with stone streets is a small, wizened old woman. A tall oil lamp towers over her, illuminating the night, and she looks up into a stone tower. A single room is brightly lit, and it's here that we find Sephie, wearing her nightgown and brushing her hair nervously. So much has changed so quickly, she says, that she hardly recognizes herself. Everything is so new and strange. Here she brushes up her bangs, exposing the sigil that is on her forehead. Sephie scrubs her arm against it. Whatever it is, it won't even come off. Why can't the world just be the way it used to? A hand dropping to her shoulder makes Sephie jump. The brush falls from her hand, and her uncle Elan stands behind her. We should talk, he says. Oh, I didn't hear you come in, Sephie starts. I haven't had the chance to thank you yet for bringing me to your estate. Of course. Tomorrow we'll tour Catador proper, he promises, undoing his collar. But first I need to show you something. We have both been marked. Sephie's eyes go wide. You as well? Do you know what they mean? The two of them look into the mirror. Elan's sigil is red and yellow, but it glows mostly red. Sephie's is red and yellow too, but it glows mostly yellow. His face is one of calm repose, almost boredom, as he studies his niece's reaction. Sephie's eyes are wide in surprise. She hadn't suspected this at all, and she clearly has no clue what it is about. They're marks of greatness, Elan says casually, of power. But it is not yet safe for us to reveal these gifts. Your life may depend on keeping it a secret. To that end, this is for you. He hands her a bundle, and she takes it. Sephie now holds a pink head covering thing with golden trim. It's the same covering that she will wear in Meridian Issue 2. Thank you, she says. It's, pretty. The sort of thing your mother would have worn, I think, Elan says as he bends down to pick up her hairbrush. I want you to use it to hide your mark. If people knew what we could do... His hand flashes red, and in a burst of light, the brush is reduced to ash. He lets it slide through his fingers onto the desk. Well, it's just better that they don't know. Remember, Sephie, it's our secret, he says, fixing his collar. A family secret. Sephie nods. I'll remember, Uncle Elan. Quietly, she tells him good night, and he leaves. Once he's gone, though, Sephie reaches out for the pile of ash. How did he do this? And does that mean that I can do it too? But I can't be a destroyer. Not when the people of Meridian have always been builders. Under her glowing yellow touch, the material of the former brush glows and becomes a brush once more. Outside, below, in the street, the hunched-over woman whispers,
"Oh yes, soon."
"There are others," Orium announces as this window closes too. But Ingra says that they've seen enough. The mark on them bears both of ours, equal forces in opposition. And yet, Pyram says, we still don't know how they got them. That is what I find most disturbing. Yala scoffs at this. Who cares? She still doesn't see how they could possibly pose a danger to them. Ingra turns on her, her red eyes flaring with energy. Of course they're a danger, you little fool! They're wild cards to the order of everything that we've built! Pyram says that he can see that they're dangerous. Maybe they could pool their resources and face this threat together. Oh, I imagine we'll find our own ways of dealing with this problem, Ingra says. As inviting as your offer is, I must decline. Pyram watches her. I thought you might. I'm sure that you're not planning to turn the situation to your advantage, of course. And now she smiles like a snake. Perish the thought. There's been a balance between our two houses for so long, it wouldn't do to upset it. Pyram agrees. How tragic that would be. I would hate for us to come to blows again. Agreeing to go their separate ways, the two sides decide to wait and watch the sigil-bearers, for now. They both fade away, back to wherever it is that they came from. For a moment. After a heartbeat, Ganesh and Yala reappear. Hello, my love, she says to him. Dearest, it pains me to see you so troubled. The first words that Ganesh has ever spoken in this issue, right here. We don't know where these sigil-bearers came from. We don't know how many there are, Yala admits. Despite her bluster with the group, she is clearly unnerved to some degree. Ganesh is less so. Both of their houses have languished for so long. This will light a spark in them again. Perhaps there will be strife, but with it a renewal as well. But what of them? Yala asks, holding out her hand. What does it mean for them? He holds his hand out as well, and they press their two palms together. I don't know, he says. A thing like this has never happened before. After this, nothing is ever going to be the same. When they pull their hands apart, the two have created the symbols of their individual houses, the red and the yellow, forming the CrossGen sigil. Which ends our adventures in Chronicles for now. So our framing device here, the first's little investigation, it showed us a couple of things. First off, it connected our four disparate comics together, despite how utterly different and unconnected they appear to be at first glance. 2, these scenes also showed us that sigil-bearers can come in all shapes, sizes, ages, and they can all have different powers. And 3, we know that there are more of them than just the 5 characters that have been presented to us. And 4, we know that their existence is a mystery to the first, and as such, potentially a threat to them. The level of that threat is in contention at the moment. Giselle, over in Mystic, wields great magical power, admitted by the first, but Sam's ability to hide from them is treated like it is a greater threat. Still early into his own adventure, Ethan is written off almost entirely, makes me sad, while Sephie and Alon are odd only in that their particular world has 2 sigil-bearers, regardless of what their powers are. Out of the first, Ingra, Pyram, and Trenin seem to take these sigil-bearers the most publicly seriously, while Yala really seems to have no sense of how dangerous they could be, and if she does, she's keeping it to herself. Orium keeps his thoughts to himself, as does Ganesh, until this end scene with Yala, which shows that they are in a politically long-distance relationship, which is very cute. It's adorable. But it is interesting to note that Ganesh, out of all of them, seems to relish the challenge that the sigil-bearers represent. While the others seem to fear them, Ganesh is just like, he's just kind of interested in what trouble they're going to cause. He kind of vibes with the creator and the mentor a little bit in terms of like, I just want to see what's going to happen, guys. First off, we see that hunched over old woman who we are going to meet in Meridian issue 2 next week. We will also see that tour that Elan promised Sephie, as well as the headdress that he gave her. So the continuity between Meridian issue 1 and then CrossGen Chronicles issue 1 and then Meridian issue 2 works out perfectly. But more importantly, this scene here is the first use of the sigil that we have seen from Sephie. Where her uncle's touch destroys, Sephie is able to repair or heal damage. We just barely saw her accidentally use the sigil to blind or maybe to push back Regor when he tried to kill her last issue, but here, this is an active choice. She fixes that brush, restoring it from ash, an act that should be impossible even today on Earth that we live on. We can't do something like that, but Sephie can, with just the touch of her hand and a thought. The implications for what that means is huge. Even if, from a action-oriented comic book fighting perspective, her power feels less impressive than Elan's. But it does feel totally fitting to Sephie's nature. As she says, Meridian Knights have always been builders. They make ships. They take time to carefully build not just functional crafts, but works of art, right? Sephie appreciates what things are, taking nothing for granted, while Elan carelessly destroys anything, everything, if it gets him something. That contrast between the two is once again perfectly demonstrated in this scene, and we're only going to see it deepen more in our next issue of Meridian. Castellini's artwork really helps to sell the glitz and glamour of Catador and its more refined stylings, let's say. There are golden swirls and shapes everywhere, displaying Elan's wealth all over the place. His rendition of Elan is even more chilling, with extremely sunken-in cheeks, curved high eyebrows, and a cold indifference to his every gaze. I do love the little smile that he gives when he activates his sigil to destroy the brush. He likes demonstrating his power. He revels in it just enough to let his cold, calculated demeanor slip. And that's an interesting character moment. Sephie, on the other hand, is done up quite a bit more than we've seen previously. Even when Sephie dressed up for her uncle's arrival and the party, she didn't have on any makeup or look especially fancy. She had on a red dress and some new sandals and a nice little piece of jewelry around her arm, but that was really it. But here, after the death of her father and her arrival on Catador, she has either put on fake eyelashes or, more likely, Castellini just likes to draw a thick eyelash. But where Josh Middleton's Sephie is cute, for sure, Castellini's feels intentionally sexier. Her nightgown is barely closed with high contrast shadows showing every curve and nipple, which again, on a young character, feels kind of inappropriate. It is in keeping with every other woman that Castellini draws in this issue. You should see Giselle from Mystic, good God! But Sephie is the one person on whom it feels absolutely ridiculous and unnecessary. On the gods, you can understand it a little bit more, right? They're gods, everything about them is heightened and enhanced. Where the dudes look really sexy, the ladies look really sexy. You can make some degree of that. The rest of these people are human, and they shouldn't look that silly. I would argue that Castellini's artwork doesn't mesh well with any of the art styles from any of the individual comics, although it does set the stage for what the first will look like incredibly well. As the main characters for this issue, I would say that works, but for this Meridian-based part of the story, it's a pretty awkward fit in my opinion. Given that Chronicles functions as the main introduction to CrossGen's overall mythology and its connective tissue, it is also the perfect place to introduce the company itself. As such, we then get a bunch of bonus page materials after the main story finishes. And this includes things like introductions to and cute drawings of the main creative teams of each of the comic, what they refer to in-house as pods. We then get 2 pages introducing each of the individual comics, including their first 2 covers, art of the lead character, and kind of the elevator pitch for that particular book. Basically, if you read CrossGen Chronicles issue 1 and you liked most of what you saw, this was the editorial box pointing you to a particular book. Did you like the look of Giselle? Then you should try out Mystic. Intrigued by the mystery of Sam? Read Sigil. I really like this. Maybe you weren't sold on one of the stories because you didn't particularly like Castellini's artwork here. Well, hey, that's fine. Here are the covers, and here's some artwork for the book's main artist, showcasing what it'll actually look like when you read it. Don't like Castellini? That's fine. Go look at Jim Chung's work. It's great. There is also a nice 2-page spread that walks you through how a comic is made. This not only allows us to learn about the early days of CrossGen history, but we also get to see the stages of life that a comic goes through. It is a very bare-bones explanation, don't get me wrong. There isn't a lot here that is unique to CrossGen, but I still find it fascinating to watch a page go from pencils to inks to a finished colored page. Inking and coloring can make a world of difference to just plain pencils, and don't get me wrong, I love the look of just plain pencils, especially depending on the artist, but it's really magical watching a blank page go from nothing to a world and characters that you're invested in. We also get small introductions to the production staff who help keep CrossGen running, even if they aren't the people that are working on the comics. This is a great way to showcase how many people it actually takes to run a company like this, doing work that is normally thankless and unacknowledged by us as the fans. And finally, we end with a letter from our publisher himself, Michael Atiyeh, speaking about CrossGen's promise to deliver the best possible comics that they can. That is 48 pages of comic, 32 to be fair, of actual comic with gorgeous artwork, mind you. 16 of CrossGen related bonus material, all of it with no ads, except, for the company trying to sell you on their comics. And if you're going to have an ad, it might as well be for in-house stuff, right? And you got all of that for $4, baby. How could you not try that kind of comic out? How could you not walk into your shop and see that cover and go, $4? This is a heavy book. I'll try it. Ugh. As for whether it worked out or not, clearly it worked on me. If I do remember correctly, I think I bought CrossGen Chronicles last out of all of the CrossGen books. I think just because I couldn't find it initially. And when I did finally buy it, I think that I mainly bought it for the intent of, having it in case of emergency dislike, right? I was like, well, I've got these 3 issues of Sigil. I might as well buy Chronicles just in case I don't like them and I want to return them. And clearly I never did. I have been sold on CrossGen from pretty much the moment I found it, and I've been that way ever since. Next week, we will return to Meridian with issue 2. Sephie and Alon will tour Catador proper, and Sephie learns some uncomfortable truths about her new guardian and family member. Meanwhile, on Meridian, her people find themselves at the mercy of Catador's troops, but not totally unprepared. Join me in a week for Comic Book Breakdown episode 32.3 of Meridian, Gilded Cage. If you enjoyed this episode of Breakdown, please make sure to hit that like button, and if you are not subscribed to the show, then click on that as well. I love getting feedback, and I would really appreciate it if you did so. If you have any questions, concerns, or would like to suggest a comic or a series to me, Breakdown can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and on a variety of podcast platforms, with links in the description for this episode below, as well as the email cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Thank you for your time and attention.